Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Direct to Consumer Retail in the UK, which is hosted by the Direct Selling Association. My name is Natalie Berg, and I am delighted to be your host for today's session. I am a retail analyst and author. I've spent nearly 2 decades now reading, writing, researching, commentating, presenting on the industry, and in particular on the trends shaping the future of retail. I focus a lot on disruption, which until COVID hit was primarily in the form of Amazon. So I've spent a lot of time analyzing Amazon as a company and the impact they've had on the high street, and most importantly, how the sector can evolve for the digital era. So that's me. I am thrilled to be joined by such a diverse panel for this morning's session. Joining us for today's roundtable, we have Cliff Jones, Sales Director of the One-to-One Diet by Cambridge Weight Plan. We have Peter Kropp, Global Director of The Body Shop at Home. Alessandro Martinez, Managing Director of Vorwerk UK. Susannah Schofield, OBE, Director General of the Direct Selling Association, and Andy Smith, General Manager, Amway UK and Ireland, and Chair of the Direct Selling Association. So a very warm welcome to all of you. The structure for today's call, today's roundtable, we're going to start off with a little bit of an overview on what's happening in the broader retail sector. So I'm going to spend the next 5 to 7 minutes just talking you through some of the top line trends and how COVID has completely upended shopping habits. And then we're going to move into our panel discussion and focus more on the direct to consumer channel. So without further ado, a little bit about what's happening in retail right now. As a retail analyst, at the start of the year, I thought we're moving into a new decade, so it's a great time to put out a series of predictions. Little did I know that a couple months later, a pandemic would hit, and all of those predictions would essentially be thrown out the window. Having said that, what's really interesting in my view is that actually, if you look back at the predictions that I put out in January, almost all of them are not only still valid, but have actually been accelerated by COVID. So I think a lot of what we'll see, and I'll come on to this in a little bit more detail later, a lot of what we are seeing now is an acceleration of those trends that were in motion before the pandemic hit, particularly around digital transformation. But first, I think it's important to start off talking about the consumer. We're all consumers. We are 21st century shoppers, and we are used to having the world at our fingertips. So when COVID hit and when those everyday certainties suddenly disappeared, I think that was a real shock to our system. So something that we never experienced for most of us in our lifetimes before. And so suddenly all those everyday certainties, the ability to go to work, to send your kids to school, access to healthcare, access to groceries on the shelf, access to toilet paper, all of those things all those things that we take for granted every day suddenly disappeared. And I think that that will have a lasting impact on sort of how we behave after the pandemic. I think that, I think some of this behavior will stick. I think the pandemic has very much humbled us as consumers and really made us focus on the most important things in our lives. The other important aspect here is that pre-COVID, our lives were very digitally influenced. Now our lives are overwhelmingly digital. We've learned to live truly digital lives, and we've learned to work online, to homeschool our kids online, socialize online, exercise online. We've learned to do a lot of things virtually that we would have never dreamed of before. And I think that in the future we won't know where the physical world ends and the digital world begins. Our values, I think, have also changed. So I've already alluded to the fact that the pandemic has humbled us and made us appreciate the most important things. I think we are about to experience this great consumer reset. I think the pandemic has shown a light on the environmental impact of consumption and it's awakened many of us to the realities of climate change. So one of my trends that I put out before the pandemic hit that is still very valid, if anything, it's been solidified, is this shift away from mindless consumption and towards mindful consumption. So I think conscious consumerism really is about to enter the mainstream. So that's the consumer in a nutshell. I mean, I'm giving you a whirlwind tour here of what's happening. In terms of the retail industry, I think what's interesting is that we have to bear in mind that, the sector is no stranger to disruption, right? I mean, we've had Amazon breathing down the necks of retailers for the past decade, but nothing has jolted the industry like COVID. As I said, pre-COVID, Amazon was that primary catalyst for change. And I think that COVID, in terms of digital transformation, COVID will finish what Amazon started. Digital transformation is no longer optional. If anything, it's just about to get supercharged. So in terms of the trends that I think we'll see accelerate in coming years, the trends that were already in motion. Firstly, there's three key areas for me. The first one is naturally we'll see an acceleration in the rise of e-commerce. Clearly, we're all spending more time at home. Stores are physically shut at the moment, so we're forced to shop online. We're forced to think differently. What's interesting is if you look at the absolute explosion of e-commerce before COVID, 10 years ago, you're looking at 5-6% of total UK retail sales. And before the pandemic, it reached as a percentage of the total market about 20%. During the first lockdown, that shot up to a third of total retail sales. So we've all seen that sort of hockey stick chart where, e-commerce has just absolutely boomed. And it's the same in grocery as well. If anything, in grocery, it's even more remarkable because it took 2 decades to go from 0 to 7% of the market. And then it doubled in the space of a few months. So again, it just shows how when consumers are forced to change their behavior, they learn new ways to shop. And I think the key point here is e-commerce is at an inflection point. This is a pivotal period for e-commerce, but how sustainable is it? Will those habits continue to shift, or are we also desperate to get back into a store and shop the way that we used to once we're able to? One last point about e-commerce, because I think this is going to be really interesting for the future, is the past decade, if we think about e-commerce experiences, it's been all about removing friction from the customer experience. So fast and free delivery, free returns, personalized recommendations, reviews, one-click checkout. It's just about making it as seamless as possible to shop online. I think the next decade, there's a real opportunity to make e-commerce experiences more immersive, more enjoyable, add an element of discovery and fun and excitement. And I think social commerce can come into play there as well. The second trend for me that will be accelerated by COVID is the convergence of physical and digital retail. And again, this is something that was really picking up pace before COVID. Things like click and collect, for example. Click and collect is, it's been around for years here in the UK, but what I found really interesting during lockdown is how many local independent retailers embraced click and collect. Fish and chip shops, my local library is doing click and collect. Everyone has embraced this technology that enables you to marry the best of both physical and digital worlds, especially at a time when stores are forced to close. But also what's been interesting is seeing the rise, the increased adoption of technologies in store that, whether intentional or not, actually facilitate a safe shopping environment. So things like contactless payments, scan and go technology, for example. And on the more sort of experiential side of retailing, what's been interesting is to see the rise of, virtual shopping sessions, personal shopping slots with advisors, and still being able to replicate the advice and expertise you'd get in store, but in a virtual setting. And I think that's something we'll probably come on to in the panel debate. The last trend that I think we'll see accelerate, and this is the one that's not so nice to talk about, but we do have to, which is the demise of mediocre retail. So a weeding out of those retailers that have been struggling, that have failed to adapt, that have failed to evolve, and essentially failed to stay relevant. I mean, you only need to look at the news today to see what's happening with Arcadia and Debenhams. And I mean, there's a lot more to that story, but essentially it's about keeping up with changing customer demands and changing times. And I think COVID will be the death knell for many retailers, sadly. I think we need to brace ourselves for more doom and gloom, more job losses, more store closures, more redundancies. And I think that's a sad fact of the current situation. But remember that last year, before the pandemic even hit, things were really tough. If you look at the BRC data, UK retail sales are actually in decline. So we have to bear that in mind as well. And I think that a key theme of this crisis is that the strong will emerge stronger. So Amazon, in my view, is hands down the undisputed winner of the pandemic. But ultimately, it will be about ensuring relevance and ensuring that you're able to evolve and adapt. The last thing I want to say, and I'm conscious I'm covering a lot of ground in a very short space of time, but the last thing I want to say, and then we'll move into the panel discussion, is talking about the physical store, because we hear a lot about the demise of bricks and mortar retail. We hear a lot about a retail apocalypse and how, it's the future is online shopping. I would actually say the future of e-commerce is stores. I think that stores play a vital role in facilitating that online sale. But generally speaking, we have had to put the fun and the joy of shopping, we've had to put all that on hold because of COVID, because of, ensuring that, we're keeping customers and staff safe when they shop in store. But in a nutshell, I'll keep this pretty brief. I think we will see a revival, a resurgence of the physical store late next year. I think that, again, pre-COVID, there was a lot of work going into reinventing the physical space, and retailers recognize that physical stores can no longer just be about selling. They've got to offer something that online retailers can't do. And for me, pre-COVID, if you asked me what the store of the future was, I'd say it had to be frictionless. So using technology to bring the physical store into the 21st century. It had to be a hub for fulfillment. So again, it had to be, we think about the future around micro fulfillment and grocery in particular, and click and collect, and using stores as mini warehouses to cater to growing demand for things like same-day delivery. So again, redefining the purpose and the role of the store. And then the last thing for me is experiential. And that's the part that we've had to put on hold because of the pandemic. And I think that will come back. I think it will really come back. I think, something I've been saying to journalists just this week is that we will have this century will have its own sort of roaring 20s. And I think there's a lot of pent up demand. We're all social creatures. We're desperate to get back into a physical store and experience all the things that we can't get from a screen. So for me, as retailers start to think about how they repurpose the physical store going forward, all of those things are still important. The frictionless aspect, the becoming a hub for fulfillment, to cater to the continued growth that we will see in online retail. But also it's about human touch, it's about an emotional connection, it's about discovery and community. And I do think that bricks and mortar retail will become a high touch, sensory driven experience once again. I think we will have to wait in a good year for that to really come bouncing back, but it will be there. And I think we're all as consumers really desperate for that chance to get back in stores. So that's my whirlwind tour. I'm conscious, we've covered a lot of ground in a short space of time, but hopefully that will have, seeded some thoughts. That's sort of what I think is happening in the broader retail sector and its direction of travel. There's clearly a lot of parallels, particularly around the consumer, I'd imagine. But what I found really interesting when I was doing a little bit of prep for this roundtable is that it seems that you're all a lot more insulated, and that the direct-to-consumer channel more generally has fared much better than the broader retail sector. I think someone had actually said in the notes that COVID has created more opportunities. So I really want to explore that. And I think maybe to kick things off, if we start off with you, Susannah, what is it about the direct-to-consumer channel that has made it so resilient? So is it to do with the nature of the categories? So what is being sold? Or is it how these products are sold? And perhaps you could just talk us through some of the broader trends that you're seeing in this space as it compares to what's happening in the broader retail sector.
Thank you, Natalie. And I'll be totally honest with you. I think when they announced the first lockdown in March, my genuine panic that the sector was in significant trouble, because we are a social selling business. We are, you know, my specialism is neuroscience, and touching on what you said before, ultimately we are pack animals. We hunt together, kill together, eat together. That's what we're supposed to do. So when you take that, and our business models are very much built around people buy from people, and that's the mantra of all selling, isn't it? If you like your local stock, your local shop guy, you go down and you buy from the store, you represent your local community, you eat in restaurants where you feel comfortable with the maitre d'. You know, we have these enormous retail habits that we follow. We all have our own perfumes, we all like to use the same locker at the gym. We have these habitual things that suddenly were broken. And I remember thinking that this is it. How on earth is this community going to get out? And interestingly, pre-COVID, we started to see a real resurgence in the old traditional party plan. So take it back to Tupperware, you know, those age-old things where people used to get together and they'd all share. We saw Osborne Books, you know, rocket with people getting together, kids reading books together, communities. And actually that was the start for me of seeing where retail physicality meets that digital world. And if I may be so bold as to say, I think the direct selling world had a four-step on that. I think we were doing it already. We were already taking that physicality and putting it into a very virtual buy online, do it digitally, but get together in small groups and experience things. Whether it's reading, whether it's, you know, examples of how to do, whether it's tutorials of putting on makeup, whether it's dietitian advice, whatever it is, there were huge groups of people. And that whole generation, you know, Generation X and Y were really about having that integrity, understand. They didn't want to buy from huge influencers that were being paid online. They wanted authenticity. So for me, there's no better way of selling anything than as a humble human being saying, I love this face cream. It's from the Body Shop. I use it every day. Would you like to buy it and try it too? Now I'm going to make money on that. If you don't want to buy it from me, pop into the Body Shop store, bricks and mortar, or buy it online, or you can do it locally. But after lockdown came, and I think we started to think, gosh, how do we do this? And we had lots of group discussions. But actually, and I don't mean to speak ill of my board or of the CEOs of any company. Actually, it was the consultants who run their own businesses that drove innovation at such a rate. And I'll be interested to hear whether everyone else agrees. But you know, you sign up as a consultant to sell direct to consumer. Therefore, as a consultant, it's your business. And I think people just thought, how can I help in such a terrible time? There are people that are going to have to self-isolate. I can't go out and do my parties anymore. I can't necessarily put brochures through the door because of all the touch. How do I go about making sure that I can still serve my customers? And they did that. They did that in droves. They did it digitally. They did it by, you know, still socially distancing, but delivering really vital goods, albeit whether it was food or whether it was healthcare products, to people's doors that had to isolate and step back. And they took the business in a direction that drove enormous innovation and humbled me. And I remember looking around in April thinking, wow, they're really going. And back at the beginning, this time last year, actually, almost to the day, we had our AGM. And I remember stepping out from there saying I was going to be punchy. The sector was seeing an upward trajectory. The way the consumer was buying, we were starting to see they wanted to buy, as I say, in a more obvious, transparent, trustworthy way. A lot of the products, if not all of them from the DSA, you know, you can trace back through their members exactly where those products are made. A lot of them are made in the UK. They're all ethical. Huge numbers of them are vegan, tolerant. So we already started to see the consumer driving, saying, actually, I want to be part of this industry and part of this sector. So it was interesting when we saw it and they started coming. But this time last year, I predicted, and I said I would be punchy because we'd started to see the Nike tick and say we go between 15 and 20% growth. And I remember in March saying, oh, well, what an idiot, I'm going to look now, what do I know? But actually, for most of the companies sitting around here, we've seen treble digit growth this year because of that innovation. And I think that's what makes this sector so powerful. I think what makes the sector so different. And for me, the opportunity moving forward is phenomenal. And we've seen some companies that started to step back maybe from having their direct consumer have suddenly ramped it back up again and realized this is the way to go. And I must take 3 phone calls a week from fast moving consumers consumer good companies saying, how do we either utilize an existing network, or how do we build a network to do exactly this? Because gone are the days where people wander around shops and touch and feel and smell. So how do you get it into people's homes safely and securely? And I think this for us is just an exciting period of time. I see nothing but growth, and it's tragic that we've had the pandemic, but actually for me, I think the credibility of this industry is the way the consultants have evolved and changed the way they've taken the goods to market. And I think, as you rightly say at your opening, that will be a step change forever. And I see more and more people entering this sector. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Great, thank you. That's so interesting, and such a great point about being closer to the customer. And I guess it's that agility and being able to respond to changes more quickly than especially some of the bigger retailers who are really struggling to make those changes.
Yeah, I think some of the key there is we didn't have to close. We didn't have to, and I think that was, we could still provide those vital services because we could do it safely and securely. So yeah.
Definitely. It's about those pandemic pivots. Great. Thank you, Susannah. All right, just turning now to the rest of the panel. I think maybe if everyone could just briefly introduce themselves and their businesses. And I'm going to start off with quite a big question, which is just to get things going and just piggybacking off of what Susannah said. What do you think, and we're going to get into all of this in more detail, but what do you think is the most significant impact that COVID has had on your business? To what extent did COVID accelerate change, for example, or has it perhaps sparked some new trends in the industry? So Andy, if we could perhaps start with you, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Susannah. You gave a great framing for all our experiences, I think. And you're absolutely right, Susannah. I remember the 7th of March, lockdown hit. And we were all jumping on calls with our most successful consultants, trying to understand what this might look like. And I don't think I could never have predicted, where the year has ended up. We're just closing out November. November will be the biggest month in Amway UK's history. We've been around for 47 years, by the way. Not personally, obviously look far too young to be around 47 years with Amway. So yeah, we started in 1973. So we're a very mature business. And over the last few years, we've had, some decent increases, maybe 4 or 5% a year in general kind of trends with the economy, but seeing significant growth this year. The one word I'd use to capture what COVID has done, actually, because it's affected all our businesses in so many different ways. The one word I'd use is community. And this is quite a strange thing for an old direct seller. By the way, I started with my first direct selling company in 1983. So I'm kind of 37 years in and have worked for a number of different companies. Amway now for 12 years. And the business, as you say, Susannah, is all about people and people connecting face to face. This has always been, whether it's a party or a face-to-face consultation, or consultants, introducing people into their team. It's been a face-to-face, although online has kind of supported that business model for years. But actually, in hindsight, looking at this year, the community is stronger now. Our consultant communities are stronger. The relationship between our consultants and our customers are even stronger. And by the way, I'm still trying to get my head around this, because this has all happened online. It's been just a miracle somehow. But you talked about pivoting, Natalie. Our consultants we were in shock. Susannah, you're right. We were in shock for 2 weeks. We had some major product supply issues because of the huge demand. We have a nutrition range, which has been like 30% of our business forever and a day. That's now 60% of our product mix. So after we'd got around the challenges of product supply, we started to see consultants just just running their online business. So I would say simply, community has been at the heart of our success. So it's built on the foundations of our business, as you say, Susannah, face-to-face, person-to-person selling, but now in an online environment. They're connecting with more people, more successfully, with less effort in a lot of ways, because we give this brilliant business opportunity, income opportunity to all our consultants. So the time versus reward factor has really significantly improved for them. I think we're becoming a bit challenged around being, Zoom life, we call it. We can't wait for the day where we are face to face again. But but I think it's forever changed. I don't think we'll ever go back to how we were, but I think it'll be a nice blend of offline and online, bricks and mortar and online. So community for me, I'm still in awe of the community spirit that's come together. We feel closer to our consultants and customers than ever before, actually, which, as I say, which is a bit of a dichotomy with our, you know, what we've always built our business on. So community for me is amazing.
Interesting. Yeah. And so interesting how, you know, you strengthen that online as opposed to doing it in person, which is traditionally how you would have strengthened community in the past. So yeah, interesting. Great. I don't know, Alessandro, would you like to go next?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I agree with what Susannah said before. For person-to-person business, a pandemic is the worst nightmare. We didn't know how we were going to react, how to run our parties or demonstration or cooking classes. But I have to say, I'm proud of what our consultants, how our consultants embrace this journey. So, and with courage and openness, of course, we moved from face-to-face meeting to online demonstration and cooking classes, and their passion and love for our products have been stronger than any social restrictions. So they've been able to go beyond the screen of a laptop. And what Andy said is right, is that sense of community and belonging. I always say to my team, we don't sell a product, we sell an experience. We build relationship with our customer. You touched before about experimental shopping and emotions. This is exactly what direct selling does. And that's exactly why, okay, direct selling is thriving. So you mentioned Amazon as a big winner. I strongly believe direct selling is also a winner in this time, because we are able to build trust, fidelity, a sense of belonging. And it was fun to see most of the people starting all this online demonstration. They've never done it before. And even in that human mistake, okay, that brought that sense of family and connection with our customer, which is so important. So we are not just selling one product and walking away. So any customers become part of our community, part of our family. So we share recipes with our product Thermomix. So cooking is such an important part during this time of lockdown. So people are spending more time at home. So what Andy said is applicable to our business. Every month I share the result, and it's a breaking record month. So we are almost double our turnover. We have over 2,000 new consultants who have joined this year. So it's been a great performance. But what particular for me, I'm relatively new to direct selling. I joined Vorwerk 3 years ago. I've spent over 17 years in FMCG B2B business. What for me has been the key change is that human interaction that you are able to build, okay, with our consultant first, but then with our customers. And our consultants are our first customers. So our product, before launching any new products, okay, our customers can be assured that, again, they pass through the test of all our consultants, and we need to convince them before even reaching their market. So it's a great time. Of course, again, it's been a difficult period. If you remember, during the time of the financial crisis, we used to say, never waste a good crisis. You are absolutely right, Natalie. This pandemic has accelerated trends that were already happening, has not changed. If anything, have forced even more business to be more agile and more flexible. And this is exactly what we are trying to do in Vorwerk. So we want to modernize our direct selling through our omni-channel strategy, which is 3 connected channels with direct sales at its heart.
Great, thank you, Alessandro. And I'd really like to get into the omni-channel bit in a little bit more detail in the importance and role of stores, but we'll go through the rest of the panel and then come back to that, because I think it's a really important point.
Sure.
Great. I'm sorry, just moving my notes. Cliff, would you like to share your experience of how COVID has impacted your business?
Yeah, sure, Natalie. So yeah, Cliff Jones, the one-to-one diet by Cambridge Weight Plan. I think actually, so you used an expression, Natalie, a little while ago, pandemic pivot, and I think that's what we've been through. That would be the perfect expression. So it's been a year of 2 halves, actually. So the first half, financial year at least, we had real challenges. So we might be unique here in that we didn't have any direct-to-consumer facility at that time. For 35 years, one of the rules was you had to see people face to face. That's the way in which you would sell and consult with nutrition and weight loss products. And so we had to change that overnight. So the consultants wobbled a little bit. We were probably wobbling more, but we brought in a direct-to-consumer facility quite quickly, removed that face-to-face necessity, but remained true to all of the rules and the processes. And well, they didn't stand still. They just went for it, just like everybody else has described, really. So the second half of the year. So I mean, I suppose if we said April was our lowest sales in 5+ years, and we were thinking, well, what does this look like? Where are we going? October, November, highest sales months ever. So you can see that complete transition, which is amazing. So the digital change really has been huge. And the other thing, I will be echoing what other people have said, is the community. I mean, it's been staggering. We've just had a webvention, obviously it's not a conference, a webvention. The theme was Stronger Together, and the sense of community there brought together what has been a phenomenal year. We knew we were strong as a group, people, and not just the consultants, but their dieters, their customers. But actually it came together in a way that I don't think we could ever have thought possible. People have looked out for each other. They've looked after each other in the local community. It's been more than just selling products and helping people to lose weight. It's been about, helping each other get over the line, which is very much what we've seen all over the country and all over the world, I suppose. But it's come to life in our business, and it's a really positive step. So yes, there were some really dark times in April, and we had to adapt very, very fast, and we did. But actually, the consultants probably would have got there before us if we hadn't have done anyway, in fairness. And now we're looking at a very different proposition. So a mixed bag.
Yeah, great, thank you. Peter, do you want to share with us your experience at The Body Shop?
Sure, I'm Peter, and I'm the Global Director of The Body Shop at Home with The Body Shop. And echoing what my colleagues have shared, I think we've had the same journey. We actually, as Susannah said, entered 2020 on quite a growth trend over the last 3 years. So we already had a strong base to build from. And it is impressive how quickly the consultants and the field leaders pivoted to the coronavirus situation. We call it the Corona coaster. So there's been ups and downs, but the sales have gone up, but I think we've all lost a lot of hair in the journey. I think at the beginning of the year, just like with Andy, massive supply chain issues, because how does supply chain catch up to that demand? April, May, we were actually selling in 1 month equivalent to what we sold full year 3 years ago. So just an incredible volume. We also had a huge influx of people coming in. Some people had been consultants before, some people starting, the journey, but it's, I think it represents a lot of different things for people. One is in times of economic insecurity, people being able to make a bit of extra cash. I think especially as a lot of people had family members on furlough, jobs at risk, there was a need and a necessity. And direct sales is very democratic in that we accept, anybody can join a direct selling company. It's just up to your desire, to put in the time and the effort and the energy to get something out at the end. And we actually, have seen, about a 200% growth year on year. And we've seen also a similar growth in the consultant base, and are pretty confident actually that we'll retain the majority of those consultants going into 2021. Because I think as people, and I'm sure it'll be the same for my colleagues with other businesses, that they've realized they can actually have a parallel business to a full-time job. They can do it in the pockets of their life. We've removed a lot of the very traditional way of working, maybe similar to what Cliff was sharing, that people have to go to somebody's home, they have to set up a party, they have to do this, they have to deliver the product. There were a lot of sort of very traditional expectations, and the pandemic, has broken many paradigms and really caused a systemic shock that people have had to adapt very quickly. So I'm really impressed with our field leaders. We're also an older company, similar to Andy, 25 years, in the UK market. Some consultants who've been with us since the beginning, 25 years, some really tried and true ways of working, and they've had to adapt. So it's quite fascinating to see everyone from 19-year-old new joiners who are experts in TikTok all the way up to 67-year-old grandmothers who have absolutely reinvented their business and grown, and really impressive stories. And I would echo community, but I would just say the biggest for us is accelerating digital transformation, and really making sure that we're taking away the operational obligation on the consultants and liberating their time to be more of a selling, a recommender, an advocate. And I think similar to what Alessandro shared with Vorwerk, really coming up with very creative ways to sell product. I mean, some of it it's very organic. Some of it's quite funny, but it's very true to who they are as people. And I think that's also a big change, that consumers want to speak to an organic voice, not to a brand sort of spit-fed to them. So I think that's the biggest transformations we have.
Fascinating. No, that's so interesting. Thank you. And there's, clearly just hearing from all of you, there's some overriding themes around authenticity, community, transparency. There's so much to unpack there. First, I'm going to stick with you, Peter, because I want to go back to, and you, Alessandro, if that's okay. I want to talk about stores, because I know, Alessandro, you've got a flagship store, and obviously the Body Shop has a portfolio of stores. As we saw during lockdown, if you don't have stores, speaking more generally across the retail sector, if you don't have an e-commerce operation, not stores, if you do have stores, but not an e-commerce operation, and your stores are forced to shut, as we saw with Primark, for example, it suddenly shows how vulnerable you are by not having that digital presence. And I think, Primark is quite a unique example, because I can count on one hand the number of retailers that can get away without a transactional e-commerce offering. And Primark, pre-lockdown was very much one of them. So sorry, I'm rambling now about stores. There's so much to say, and obviously bricks and mortar is in the midst of huge transformation anyway. Pre-COVID, what I thought was really interesting is that we had this online to offline trend, this O2O trend, where digitally native brands like Amazon and countless others were moving into the physical space because they recognize the importance, not just as a place to collect online orders, but also a place to engage with your customers. We all hear about that elusive halo effect, where if you have a physical presence, you see a huge growth in online sales within that catchment area. So there's plenty of reasons for those online retailers to start to move into physical stores. What I thought was interesting during lockdown was, we started to see some bricks and mortar retailers actually say, well, we don't need stores, we can do it all online. So we saw TM Lewin, for example, said they're going to close all their stores and focus on e-commerce. Microsoft globally is closing most of their stores. And then you've got retailers like Zara, for example, closing a ton of stores and focusing more on e-commerce. So there is this kind of redressing of the balance, I feel. Now, I want to hone in on direct to consumer here, and I'm just curious, what are your views? Because your specific channel is quite unique. I think it's unique to some of the demands to compared to the rest of the retail sector, and I'm just interested in your views. How has having a bricks and mortar presence, how has that impacted your direct selling channel? Has it been an asset or a liability? What are your views on the importance of having that omni-channel presence? Because again, as consumers today, we've got so many ways to shop. Is it an important component of any brand strategy, or can you go without stores, or can you go without an e-commerce offering? I'm just curious to hear your views on that topic. So maybe Peter, if I stick with you, if we start off there, that would be great.
The Body Shop is a retailer at heart, and it's a retailer by origin. So there's no chance that we'll be moving away from that retail landscape. In fact, the company is quite optimistic about where we'll be going with that brick and mortar retail going into the future. People want different shopping experiences. That's at the heart of it. And different customers shop in different ways in different channels. Some prefer going to a store. Some are happy with an e-commerce experience. And there's those who want to purchase, family and friends, which is really how most consultants start their business, and then they grow that. So it's an opportunity for everybody. I think what the company is looking for is to be less predominantly reliant on one channel, but actually to focus on building more balanced portfolio across all three channels, and that's what we would call them. So it's the direct sales channel, which I represent, a very robust e-commerce channel, and then also the brick and mortar. So we're quite confident for all three channels. What it has given is the ability to flex. It's been given the ability to work with customers to help direct them to channels of choice, and also when stores shut down, to be able to move around inventory, to be able to move customers through social media to channels. What's been unique about the direct selling channel, the Body Shop at Home, is actually we've been quite additive in terms of customers, but we definitely piggyback off the brand equity that we have in the market. So this year we've probably seen, would guesstimate about 80% of the customers coming into the Body Shop at Home are actually new customers to the brand, or reconnected customers to the brand. And we see when stores open, we do see the expected volumes moving back in the store. So really the focus for the next 3 years is really how to build a balanced portfolio with 3 channels. It gives flexibility. The company's rolled out whole new e-commerce websites this year. We opened a new market for the direct selling channel. And we're growing rapidly in our existing market. So it's just about a balance. I can't imagine we would ever exist or could exist without the brick and mortar. They're the backbone of the business.
Interesting, thank you. And Alessandro, how about you? Because I know having a flagship is a bit different to having a large portfolio of stores around the globe.
It is indeed. Even though Vorwerk is a global organization, we have hundreds of stores in Europe. So I echo what Peter said before. So for our vision is we want to modernize direct selling through omni-channel. So we want to play within all 3 channels, but by keeping direct selling at our heart. So we are a direct selling company and we want to continue to be direct selling. Let me say, as I mentioned, I've been 17 years in B2B business. So, and companies spend millions in advertising, trying to find a way to reach their customers, and able to drive footfall in shop, but customers still have the option to choose which product to go for. So omni-channel can work in direct selling because we own the channel. So, and we need to be considerate of what customer and how customer want to shop. So, and even retails have new meanings. So for us, sales is not the most important goals. For us, it's more creating a connection. You mentioned before about that experimental shopping, which in our shop people can have. Because again, our customers can and our community can find a place where they can see our product, okay, they can engage, we can create leads for our consultants. So it's much more broad. And so we are, again, trying to create connection wherever they are, which is exactly what direct selling is. And what I mentioned before is that creating that, building that relationship. And I believe that direct selling drive exponential connections, and through this digital world, actually this has compounded and empowered even more to reach even a larger audience in our business.
Interesting. And it's almost as if we are seeing this bifurcation, this sort of growing disparity in shopping or in retail, where you've got the functional, transactional kind of nature of shopping online, and knowing exactly what you want and having it delivered the same day, effortless, seamless, don't have to think about it. And then there's this other growing end of the spectrum, which has, for bricks and mortar, had to be put on hold a little bit. But and that's where I think, as you say, direct selling can come in and create that sense of belonging, participation, community, and that's really, really powerful in terms of driving customer loyalty. And I think more traditional retail will be looking to you guys for inspiration.
And let me add one more point. So we are, of course, direct selling is about demonstrating our product. In our shops, we demonstrate our product. People can touch our product, use their product, use their Thermomix, trying recipes, and that's exactly what make our proposition unique.
Absolutely.
Andy,
sorry, go ahead, Andy.
No. Can I share a different approach that Amway's taken on physical presence and on bricks and mortar, which is interesting as well, I think. We had a huge flagship store in the centre of London. Some of you may have attended that for different DSA meetings and so on. We had it for 10 years. We opened in 2009. We closed just a couple of years ago, way before COVID. It was a huge investment for us, quite a fairly small Amway market in the UK, and we've reinvested that into more digital support for our consultants. And in fact, we've had these flagship centres for Amway in different European countries, and the decision coming out of COVID that we won't reopen, and once again reinvesting. So just to share a different approach, it was wonderful while we had it, but when we're looking at investments, we decided to support more digital and online, which in hindsight was a good move for us with the COVID situation. So just to say, Amway have taken a different approach to bricks and mortar, but just interesting. I mean, it works for different companies in very different ways. The one thing we will miss, and we do miss already with not having that, is brand awareness, as you say, Alessandro. Just to be able to invite people into the experience, very different experience to a smaller experience they would typically have with their local consultants. So, the brand awareness piece is one that we're now reflecting on, and, how do we invest in brand awareness without that physical presence is a really key question for us now. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that physical presence is key, well, for some brands at least, in terms of driving awareness with customers. And also, I think more and more physical retailers are taking inspiration from showrooms and recognizing that actually we don't need to sell the product here. We just need to, you know, showcase it. So you've got Dyson, for example, you've got Selfridges doing amazing things, you know, this is a couple of years ago now, but they put a skate bowl in their men's department. So you can just go skateboarding. You don't have to buy anything, but, you know, hopefully you will while you're in there. I guess that's the incentive, is to get you in and increase dwell time. Obviously, COVID has changed all that because it's all about decreasing dwell time at the moment, but it will come back. I want to move on to consultants, because that's obviously a huge part of the business model here, and it's something that's already come up quite a bit. You know, the way that I see it, from again speaking as a retail analyst looking at the broader sector, I think that, you know, store staff, I think the role of the in-store assistant, the face of the brand, if you will, I think that role will evolve massively over the next decade. If you look at what's happening in bricks and mortar retail, you know, there's a lot of automation coming in, and I think that the main implication is that retailers will be able to free up time for their staff to focus on the more customer facing, the more, you know, the higher value interactions with customers. Because it's all about, I mean, in my view, I think, again, COVID aside, customer experience before the pandemic hit was really becoming the new currency in retail. So I think that traditional retail can, again, learn a lot from your model. But going back to direct to consumer, I would just wonder, you know, how important is sort of training and support, particularly during COVID, as you're adding a lot of new consultants to your business? But how important is it? Because if these consultants are the face of your brand and you're giving them that autonomy to make those decisions and to interact with customers, how do you go about training and supporting your consultants, and then also ensuring consistency in their approach? And has that become more important because of the pandemic? So I don't know, Cliff, should we start with you?
Yeah, delighted to. Yeah, so it's always been an important part of our business. So when consultants join, there's a training process of a day. So there's a day training, which obviously before, because we always thought this was the case, they had to come to a face-to-face training session. That obviously changed overnight, and nothing's been lost as a result. But there's a day training and then an accreditation process, and then quite a lot of follow-up training goes with that. And of course, along with all those things, being part of the DSA means that there's a code which we talk to them about that they must adhere to. So that ensures that there's a basic level of understanding and things that they should or shouldn't do within the realms of direct sales and within our products. And then following on from that, there's extended training. So there's some people who are happy just to do a small amount, maybe see friends and family to sell to, or maybe they want to build a bigger business. So we add training onto that, of course. And so it depends on how far they want to go there, but the compliance part then comes in. So ensuring that people are selling in the ethical way and in the right way is critical. So we've seen, I mean, I think we've touched on it, we've seen a surge of new people wanting to join our business, which is great, obviously looking to try and find additional income. We were already set up in order to make sure that not anybody was just coming in and sell it. They knew what to do and they knew what the right things were. So we've been all ready for that, I suppose, is the quick answer. And as I say, the DSA code and that umbrella is a big part of making people feel confident and secure in the business that they've joined as well.
Great. Susannah, did you want to
Yeah, I just wondered if I could pick up from a kind of holistic view of seeing what consultants have done. And I think it's been really interesting in the fact that, as you rightly say, it's very hard for a brand, or I think the preconceived moment was it was very hard for a brand to trust. I mean, I did 20 years at Royal Mail, and I remember when, you know, running the commercial team out there, that if somebody picked up the Royal Mail brand and even put it on something, all hell broke loose and it was closed down. But then social media started to come in, and you could realise that people could actually comment on your brand and say anything they wanted to, and that happens all the time now. People go and buy things from shops and they unpack it and show it all, and the brand can't control that. And where I think the direct sales industry was so far ahead of this was actually they empowered people and trusted them beforehand. So direct sales as a consultant only works if you believe in the product you're selling and you use it yourself. Because if you don't use it and you think it's not at the right price point and you can't relate to it, you can't sell it realistically and authentically, and people won't buy it from you. So when we see people people doing really well and running these businesses is because they're genuine advocates of the product. So therefore they want to protect the product. So the brand almost sits within that. But where I think it's so interesting is the bricks and mortar have concessions. So unless you are a specialist concession seller, anybody you come across has a brand of things to choose from. It's almost like a wine recommendation list, isn't it? You know, pick from this myriad, it depends what you like. But direct selling consultants they're running their own concession. They only understand this product. They know, they get enormous amounts of training. As Cliff rightly said, you know, with the DSA, we do training, we do compliance as well. So we make sure that we empower these people. And they have to work under some pretty stringent guidelines. You know, they can't just go out and make willy-nilly claims about what you can earn. It can only be done on personal experience. They can't, you know, they can't market without saying they're advertising. There are some stringent things around this. But I think for me, it's almost we've led the way because we did empower people to touch the brand and trust them. And yes, there has to be enormous training around it, but actually so many people touch brands now that I'd rather have someone who loved it than someone stood at the end of a line in Tesco saying, would you like to taste this? And not really having any passion about whether they're selling Marmite one week or chocolate spread the next. You know, that this is definitely a good way. And it's interesting, just picking up on Cliff's point earlier about not having a direct to consumer market. For me, the D2C market isn't about mailing. It's not about just being online. It's about actually just selling direct to the consumer, irrelevant of the channel you use to do that. So our consultants have had a D2C market long before Amazon came in. You take back the 40 years that Amway have been here and etc. We were already doing that. We were already, before the internet started, before people could, our consultants were taking it to the door. You know, Avon, women could sell Avon in America before they could vote. That's incredible, to empower to be able to do that. And you know, they've been in this country 60 years enabling people to work flexibly, but long before Amazon was knocking on the door, and possibly with a quicker sale route as well. You know, that we're amazed now we get next day delivery, but if you've got your consultant, then they could possibly get it to you same day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. I think what's really interesting, again, looking at things from a broader retail perspective, is that during the pandemic, we saw, you know, out of necessity, retailers looking to connect online shoppers with in-store staff. And that's almost taking a leaf from your book in the sense that you're giving your staff that greater autonomy to offer a better customer experience, to offer more personalization. And again, this being done out of necessity, but is this something that might stick post-COVID? I think it will. I think it'll be a case of bridging that gap, and retailers generally looking to empower their staff more than they have traditionally. And again, the risk is, you know, possibly diluting the brand a bit and having, as you say, very clear guidelines around, you know, how you are an advocate for that brand. And I think, again, agility, especially for those smaller retailers, is that bit easier. It is easier to respond to change and make those shifts. So,
Natalie.
Yes.
Just a comment, and you make a great point about personalization, and just a quick experience on our side. We've seen the huge boom in the personalization between the consultant and the customer in the last 6-7 months through the pandemic times. We created an app about 2 years ago called the Virtual Beauty app, and it was designed as a face-to-face tool, digital tool. So the consultant sits with a customer and you take a photo of your face and you get a skin analysis. So it recommends certain skincare products, and then you can do a virtual makeover. So wonderful. It wasn't used that much, but then miracle of all miracles, lockdown happens. And now, you know, our consultants are doing personal consultations online with a new customer or a group of customers. It becomes the new Amway party night. Glass of wine, and you know, what skin care would you like, what color suits you. So interestingly, personalization has become even more of an opportunity for our consultants and as a company in an online world. And I think when we go back to some normality next year, that will continue, both face to face. I think our consultants have learned, we've all learned actually, and the same with training. We used to get a couple of hundred people to a face-to-face training. We now get 1,000 online. Now, that's not to say we won't go back to face-to-face trainings, but maybe we'll live stream it at the same time. So we've learned so many new, seen so many new opportunities, and how do we support our consultants? But to your point about personalization, I think this is where we can really, win big in our sector, and let's say mirroring the trend in retail as well. I think with that, how do you give that truly authentic customer service? That's what that's about. So.
Yeah, and this idea that necessity is the mother of invention, right? That when we're in a situation where we're forced to evolve, we do. If stores are shut, we have to shop online as consumers. And I think what's interesting is, I talked earlier about the convergence of physical and digital worlds, and that being one of the key trends that will be accelerated by COVID. And it's happening in the broader retail sector as well, with, to your point around, augmented reality, virtual reality. I think that the future of retail, and I said this before COVID, the future of retail in one word, I've always said this, is blended. I think it will be that mix of physical and digital. And it's just so interesting now how technology has actually enabled us, we never really there's never good timing for a pandemic to hit, but I think now versus say 5-10 years ago, both from a cultural perspective, being agile and responsive to change, but also the technology that enables retailers and brands to continue to offer that experience to their customers, whether virtually or in person.
Natalie, if I can add one more point, actually, to what just Andy said. I think we spoke about our consultants, and Susannah mentioned as well about the importance our consultants believe about our product, but even our product in direct selling. Okay, we don't sell any product. Okay, we sell also product that fits our direct selling models. So product that can generate that emotional connection with our customers, product that has to be best in class product, because our consultant need to be the first, okay, to be advocate of our product. So, and that is really important, because in that relation that we build with customers, we are also making sure that, okay, we provide products that fit their needs. So if I take the example of our Thermomix, okay, so again, with guided cooking, people can, even if you have never cooked before, you can experiment and have like a chef quality recipes, and having also 50,000 recipe that you can choose for. So it's not just the consultant, but it's the all mix, and product plays an important part, because to be credible, we also need to bring best-in-class products to our customer, and that's key for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, the product is what you're selling, and it's as you say, it's about creating an experience. But if you don't have the quality and the core, the basics right, then you don't really have a chance. So yeah. Interesting. Does anyone else want to comment on personalization before we move on? Because I'm really conscious of time, and I mean, I could be here all day. There's so much to discuss.
I think all I'd probably say is kind of what we touched on, is that we do have, all of us in this sector, people who want to transform people's lives, and they are product evangelists, brand evangelists, and as a result of those things, I think that the personalization comes naturally to them, because they believe in this thing, and they know how to help somebody else to see what they believe in, or whatever needs to be done. So, of course, head office Andy's idea is a great one. There's things we can do to support that, but it comes naturally, which is a real gift, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. Great. Okay. Just a couple more questions for me, and then I think we should probably wrap it up. So it's hard to make predictions when there's so much uncertainty. My job as an analyst has become a lot harder this year. But I'm just really interested to hear your views on what are your expectations for next year. Again, difficult to plan ahead, but if what are your expectations for next year? And I guess as the sort of second question, or you can choose which one you want to answer. If you were starting a direct selling business today in the midst of a pandemic, what advice would you have to a brand starting today, knowing what you know and having been through what is hopefully the worst of the pandemic? So I'm just looking around to see who's most eager to answer this question. Susannah.
An overarching view, and then everybody else. So
right.
Prediction-wise, I think we'll have an incredible year. I think 2021 will see more members join the DSA than before. I think that we will see growth, and I'm delighted about that. And we don't accept everybody. You have to be ethical. You have to run under the code of conduct, and that's really important to me. We'll also, as an industry, put more pressure on government to make sure that those schemes that pop up potentially that aren't regulated can't. You know, at the moment we choose to be a self-regulated industry, which is incredibly powerful because it, you know, it validates the fact that our members are exceptionally proud of the code of conduct that protects not just the consultant but the consumer as well, and it validates the quality of the product, as Alessandro was saying. So for me, I think that's really important, and we'll put, you know, 2021 is a big year for us to beat the drum with government to say this needs more regulation, not that our members, because our members do it already, but for those that aren't part of the association. But I think from a growth perspective, we will see many more companies start up a direct-to-consumer arm, a direct sales approach. They will keep, I believe, their retail stores, but like you were saying, that whole experimental the way we retail has changed forever. And actually, as potentially people have got used to being more inside, they don't like crowds, you know, the mental health issues that will transpire in 2021 are yet really to know, but we have changed habits beyond recognition and beyond anything we've ever had. And, you know, talking about coming out of this in Easter, potentially that will be a year of learned behavior. So actually, I think those small parties of getting back together within people's homes will be a lovely way to shop in a retail factor. And my prediction is by the end of 2021, you will see people with a portfolio of products. So they might sell some alcohol, they might sell some food, they might sell some clothes, some makeup, some jewelry. They'll have a wash of things that's almost just builds a transient portfolio career that they can take with them where they want to go, pick up and put down where they want to, and do it in the comfort of their own home or in somebody else's home. And I think, I think we'll see an enormous evolution and revolution of the industry that we'd started to see, but as you say, has done the big tick towards the back end of it. But I'll be interested to what everyone else on the panel thinks. They'll all shoot me down now. I know she's wrong.
Andy, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Susannah, for giving me a couple of minutes to think of my answer.
Set you up nicely there.
No, the reason I mentioned that is we have American parents. We're an American company, and of course we're being asked, you know, to forecast for next year. In all my years, I've never found it more difficult to put together what we think could be an accurate forecast. Generally speaking, the number of new consultants joining us, we think will continue, because in our business, momentum is everything, you know, in the way that our business grows organically, as we'll know. So we'll have the momentum. The demand for our products has never been higher, you know, beauty products and nutrition products. So we're in the right place in terms of the product. The one thing that makes it more challenging than ever before is Brexit. We have a very strong European business. Our orders are picked, packed and delivered from the Netherlands. So January the 1st, trying to understand the impact of our delivery times and product supply. So in a normal year, there'll never be a normal year again, right? If we were going into a year without Brexit, I would say, you know, we could pretty much forecast a similar growth. It really depends on what happens early in the year. So touching wood, we get some kind of trade deal by Friday of this week. Let's see. But generally speaking, very positive, because momentum's everything, and that will continue. We're for sure, not just next year, but I think for years to come, because we've redesigned our businesses in many ways. And just to answer very quickly your follow-up question, Natalie, if you were to start a direct selling business today, what advice? I would say, really understand our consumers, our customers. I think we've all always understood our consultants as our partners in business, if you like, but understanding, as you said right at the start, Natalie, how do customers want to shop now? Do they want to behave? Very different. The whole multi-channel approach makes so much sense from that respect. So once you really understand the customer dynamics and how customers will behave in the future, you can design a business to support that customer service. So that's just a thought on that.
Interesting. Yeah. And also just this idea that consumer demands haven't fully disappeared. They've just pivoted. So, there's still demand out there. And actually for some consumers, purchasing power has probably been strengthened because, we're not going on holidays and dining out and doing all those other things. So it is a weird but interesting time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Great. Alessandro?
Yeah, what Andy said, 2021 could be another year of great concern. So we have not seen a way out of COVID. And of course, we don't know yet how the end of transition period with Brexit is going to work. So we are And again, we are a German-based organization, so our products are manufactured in Europe. So again, we don't know whether it will be tariffs. So of course, what disruption we will see in the 1st of January. But from my perspective, I'm still confident that we will continue to do well in the UK, as we will benefit from all the changes we implemented this year. So what we were trying to do from our side, we will accelerate expansion in new areas where we are underpenetrated. So we have what we call a white space program to get to be closer even more to our customer and consultant. So we will aim to open more cooking studios and create more opportunity meetings where we can engage with our prospective customers. And you questioned before, I'm also a strong believer about training. So my ambition is that we can have our own Vorwerk Academy where our consultant can have their opportunity to be trained, whether it's in direct selling, but in general, okay, in leadership, social media, culinary training. So I think our consultants still remain again the key of our success, and we want to give all the opportunities. So again, I could pick many words to your other question, but Andy's right. Okay, customer is winning. So for any direct selling new business to open, understanding the customer need is key, and build a business model that's meet customer demands. And even more in this time of pandemic proves even more that be agile and flexible is also another recipe for success.
Great, thank you. Cliff, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so it is obviously difficult, isn't it, to try and work out. We are an employee-owned company, and we're based, head offices here in the UK. So I suppose because of that, Brexit is less of a concern. We do have some question marks still, obviously, but we are estimating significant growth. So we've seen that at the back end of this year, and we've become, I suppose, emboldened in our belief that we can do a lot more, both in terms of the UK and export, because of the fact that we've pivoted so fast and got through this situation we've been through. So we're anticipating growth, significant. Who knows? I think probably the biggest uncertainty is the economy. So in some respects, we could have said that, well, that hasn't had an effect on us too much this year, but you know, what will it actually look like when furloughs removed and everything else? We don't really know, do we? We can estimate. So that's where we are, or hope to be. Advice for people wanting to join. So I mean, in many ways, this is the solution to so many barriers. I think rather than say the same thing, my one thing would be, it's not just enough to have a product. You need to have something that's a story. You need to have something with integrity, something that, you know, really stands out because it's life-changing impact, or is a story behind it, or it's got that belief attached. So it's got to make a difference and have integrity. But yeah.
Yeah, great. That's really interesting. And I think this idea of purpose and retailers and brands being a bit bolder in who they're targeting and what they stand for, and consumers looking to align themselves with brands, you know, whose values reflect their own. I think that's going to become more important in the future as well. So really interesting. Thank you. And Peter, last but not least.
I appreciate it. I'll echo probably what my colleagues have shared. I mean, we're looking forward optimistically to 2021. I think probably the biggest risk is that our consultants and field leaders have been, you know, sprinting a marathon this whole year. So it's really to make sure that we're engaging at the beginning of next year, Q1. I mean, people have really been pushing very hard on their sales, and you know, there is a human factor that has to be at play to make sure that our consultants feel energized coming into the new year. But we're optimistic for 2021, actually all the way up to 2023. You know, we'd be forecasting, you know, as Andy said, you know, it's about momentum. We have a lot of people coming in, people bring in people. And I think as we become more nimble and we give people the opportunity to maximize their income with a minimum amount of hours and really, you know, start to get a supplemental wage, if you will. Everybody comes in for different reasons. So I think that'll be one of the key drivers. And, you know, speaking from an omni-channel perspective, if you're asking if somebody wants to open up, you know, direct selling or DTC, I echo what everybody else has said, but I also really emphasize that you need to put the customer at the heart of the journey. And if you're not thinking about the customer and you don't have a team that can think holistically across 3 different channels working harmoniously together, which it's not an easy task, You know, there's different drivers that work in different channels, and you need to be able to balance out how you're communicating to the customer, what offers you're putting forward to the customer, what products actually sell differently in different channels. Some sell more effectively in some channels than the other, just because of the way the demonstrator you communicate. And it's about having a team that can really think not just linearly down a channel, but holistically across the scope of the business. And that is a difficult team to bring together. And I think the Body Shop has moved and is moving very much in that direction. But it takes a while to build up that expertise. So you just don't simply turn on a direct to customer channel and you know, it's not a cake mix that you pour in water, shove it in the oven. It's a lot of hard work to build an effective direct selling channel, and you need to have credibility with your consultants in order to execute it properly. Without that, you will sell nothing.
Yeah, interesting. So it's really moving away from that cookie cutter approach, which is probably a good lesson for retail more generally. Great. I'm conscious we've gone a little bit over time, so I just want to say thank you to everyone for your time and sharing your insights. I've personally learned tons today, so I really appreciate your time. I think just to end on a positive note, you know, I think with any crisis comes opportunity, and I think one key theme that for me really stuck out throughout this conversation is agility. And Peter, you just said, you know, being nimble and responsive to change. A phrase that I, you know, have been using for several years now, well before COVID, is retail Darwinism. I think that's really what we're seeing. I think with COVID, we're seeing retail Darwinism on steroids, and it really is a case of evolve or die now. So I think those retailers and brands that are willing to evolve, I think it is actually a pretty exciting time in some ways, because there are some silver linings to this crisis. And the one thing that, you know, we can be sure of is that there will be no return to the status quo. So you have to change. So I want to thank our panel again for giving us some of their time today. So thank you, Cliff, Peter, Alessandro, Susannah, and Andy.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy Christmas when it comes.